Hello everyone, Bible believers around the world. I'm finally going to cover this subject because one thing about me is whenever I see a false doctrine or some pagan holiday or some idol or just overall unrighteousness happening on the earth, what I like to do rather than just, letting my anger, make me act out of character and act and behaved unrighteously myself, I like to pick up the scriptures and turn on the camera and help let, Bible believers all around the world be aware of this wickedness and exposing this darkness. All right. Now, what we're going to be talking about in this video is the subject of what we now call today interracial marriage. Does the Most High Yah hate it? Is it a sin? And basically what's going on with that. Now, the world hates it, all right? Especially America hates it. There was laws passed for many years to try and prevent it, and the amount of eye rolls and slurs and cuss words, type of stuff you receive for it, is very interesting. Now, the interesting thing about it is, Christ would say you'd be hated, for his name's sake, and that the world would call good evil and evil good. So it always was kind of interesting to me that this thing that is supposed to be the most evil of evil things that Yah hates is hated by the world. Now we know the world loves what Yah hates. All these countries, obsessed with idols, and child sacrifice. You got India, this full of idolatry, America, Christmas, England and Halloween and China and Buddha. The nations love doing what Yah hates. And seeing the world hate so-called mixed marriage made me think, okay, let's look into this. Now, the One West camps push the teaching that it is a sin and that the Most High Yah hates it. And they actually have quite a few scriptures that they go to prove to teach their doctrine. They go to Jubilees chapter 30, they go to Ezra and Nehemiah, and they go to Tobit, which are the main places they go. They also go to Deuteronomy, but I don't even have any idea how they make Deuteronomy say that, because Deuteronomy really explains what it's talking about in itself. I'll put some of the scriptures up after I finish talking. I'm going to try and do this as like a short lesson because this is really bad. Babies are being put on the street. I mean, we're literally having orphans and stuff because you got couples that are coming into the faith and they're saying, your wife is a descendant of Esau, and it's a sin that you're with her, and all this other type of foolishness, and vice versa. So let's get started on breaking down each scripture they use to so-called prove the doctrine. Now, Jubilees chapter 30 talks about it being an abomination to take a wife from the Gentiles, which is the part that they always read. They read that fragment where it says the abomination to take a wife from among the Gentiles. And what they don't read in context is Jubilees chapter 30 is talking about, I think her name was Diana, one of the sisters of the sons of Jacob, being raped and mistreated by an uncircumcised nation. Now, we're going to talk about uncircumcised a lot because circumcision was a sign of keeping the law. So when you hear the term uncircumcised in the Bible, a lawless people, they weren't keeping the Shabbat. All right, they didn't love Yah. And there's a key in Jubilees chapter 30 that tells you what it's about. And it's talking about the parents that, the father that gives his daughter over to the seed of Molech. So when talking about marrying people of another nation, it makes the link between other nations and idol worship. Because while it's talking about the issue of the Gentile men, it says that it's an abomination, for a man of Israel to give his daughter over to the seed of Molech in reference to giving his daughter over to a Gentile man. So already in Jubilees chapter 30, we see that there was a link between the Israelites of people of other nations and idolatry. And we're going to find out that this was a what God you serve issue and not a so-called racial issue. And one thing that I want to point out is if Moses, because Moses wrote Jubilees, I'm not sure if people know that. If Moses was saying that this was a race issue, he's a hypocrite then, because he would be teaching the congregation about the issue of people from other nations while walking around with his African wife. And the Most High is not a respecter of persons. He literally says, in the New Testament, that he will punish, the Jew first and then the Gentile. Because we're supposed to know. We're supposed to be the example. So when you see that, knowing who Moses married, that makes absolutely no sense. And like I said, look into the fine print of Jubilees chapter 30 and see where it says, unto the seed of Molech. All right? Let's think about that. Another one, they go to the book of Tobit, where Tobit told his son to avoid whoredom and to marry someone from his father's seed. They say, see, marry among your father's seed. It's a sin, it's evil. But I want to point something out, all right? Excuse me. When you look up the word whoredom, which is what Tobit wanted his son to avoid by marrying within his father's household, his father's seed, he wanted him to avoid whoredom. And when you look up whoredom in the Bible dictionary and in the Hebrew language, the strongest concordance, whoredom, one of the meanings behind the word whoredom in Hebrew is idolatry. So now we're starting to see a link between Jubilees chapter 30 and what Tobit was saying. Tobit wasn't saying those people, their skin is too dark, their skin is too light. He said, beware whoredom, my son. Once again, the Israelites made the link between people, women of other nations, and idolatry. He used the word whoredom. So that word would mean, a whore, and it also means idolatry. Those are the two meanings. Idolatrous, idol worshiper, hater of Yah. That's what it means. All right? And we really need to think about the timeline of Book of Tobit, because if I'm not mistaken, we had already had multiple so-called interracial marriages approved by Yah before the Book of Tobit was even written. So Tobit would be condemning Abraham and Moses by saying that it's a sin, which I don't think the Most High would allow that. Tobit would be saying that Abraham was in sin and that Moses was in sin. We'll get to Abraham a little bit later. But once again, it don't hold water. It's talking about whoredom, idolatry. And now I'm going to go to the book of Malachi, and Malachi kills this whole doctrine. So Judah married a Canaanite woman, and it says that abomination has been committed in Israel, for Judah has married the daughter of a strange god. Now, not all sins are called abominations in the Bible. The super, super bad ones are called abominations. So based on the abomination sin in Jubilees chapter 30 of giving over your children to the seed of Molech, and then we look at the abomination of marrying someone of another god in the book of Malachi, it's fair to link those two up as being the same abomination in that context. You realize the Most High didn't mention the fact she was an African. He said that the abomination was that he married a woman of a strange god. Let's go over it. As they call them, Caucasian women, Europeans, Japhet, what do? Easter, Christmas, Valentine's Day, yoga, Earth Day, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, collecting stones, mystical dust, animal worship. That's, what a lot of them do. And Africans, you got the dog worship, the Egyptian idols in India, and the elephants, and Asia, and the Buddha. So it's like, that's what it's about. These women and men of other nations can come in and serve Yah and be grafted in, and the Most High Yah won't have a problem with it. Joseph, Ephraim, and Manasseh came from an African woman. Abraham had Ishmael through an African. Most High had no problem with it. And here's the thing. The people who say this doctrine, they're saying that the Most High will use evil to create good. Why would the Most High would never use evil? There's nothing evil about the Most High Yah. So if it was evil all the way through and it was about race, why did the Most High Yah use so many Gentile women to build Israel? We know for a fact that Joseph's wife was not an Israelite. She was an Egyptian, and Ephraim and Manasseh came from her. And there's also been talk about Tamar not even being an Israelite, because you look into the law and it says that your handservants shall be from the nations around you. In other words, you wouldn't be an Israelite with an Israelite servant. your servant will be someone from another nation. So when we look at these women who are bearing all these children who were called servants in the scripture, if we look at the law, we could say that they were not Israelites. So when you think about that, you realize how much of us have Gentile African DNA. And the Most High Yah used them to create us. You know, then you go into Ezra and Nehemiah and it says, see, put away those strange wives. But here's the thing. There's clearly signs that those women didn't completely convert and join the Most High Yah like Ruth the Moabitess or Rahab, because the children didn't even speak Hebrew. They didn't. And once again, we would be condemning other patriarchs, and the Most High don't let certain people get away with things. All right, and then you'd be like, all right, brother, what about scriptures that prove that it's fine? Go to Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy, there's a chapter talking about the war bride, where it says that if, I'm talking about Israelites, if, you defeat your enemies and you look among the captives and see a beautiful woman, you can pare her nails, shave her head, and she may be your wife. So in modern terms, if black people rose up and overthrew Britain, and I see a beautiful British woman, and I want her for a wife, that's what that's talking about. Then you go to the book of Leviticus, and it says if an Israelite woman be married unto a stranger, she can't eat the bread of the Passover. Why is there even a section in the law of Leviticus on what a black woman needs to do if she's married to someone of another nation during Passover, if she ain't even allowed to do that in the first place? Then you look at Uriah the Hittite. He was married to Bathsheba, who was an Israelite. So interracial marriage is going on in David's kingdom, and the Most High Yah didn't tell David to step on it. David was hanging hard onto the steering wheel, making sure the Israelites are doing what they're supposed to do. And you think if interracial marriage is an abomination, he would be letting it go on? Brothers and sisters, we got to let go of this hatred. We see it time and time again. And then we go into Deuteronomy and it says, go not into them, or they into you, because they will turn you away from me and turn you unto other gods. We see it all the time. Black man marries a white woman. What happens? Now he's back into Christmas and is doing yoga poses and is watching Harry Potter. Black man marries Japanese chick. Now he's doing Buddha. But they don't talk about the instances of these women of other nations who serve Yah, who've read the scriptures back to cover, who keep the Shabbat, who have done the Passover, and they are growing together and becoming stronger. And this is going to hurt a lot of people. But the truth of the matter is, if you live in a neighborhood with only two women, one is an Israelite by blood, the other one is a heathen, but is called after Yah's name and does everything that she's supposed to do, the Most High Yah is going to put you with that Gentile woman who serves him and is, in the law and in the covenant, not with the other person just because their complexion matches you. People go into a whole thing on, cultural differences. Well, when a person of another nation comes in, their culture becomes their culture. Ruth didn't have Moabite culture in Israel. Rahab didn't have Canaanite culture in Israel. Uriah the Hittite didn't have Hittite culture in Israel. Now, if you want to keep eating rice and you want to keep, watching Friends on TV, then whatever, but your culture becomes Israelite culture. So that don't even become a problem. And the whole concept of race is a lie. People realize that a lot of that Jim Crow stuff and a lot of, you leave the States and you're not just viewed based on your color. All right? And I really have to deal with this because I'm telling you, kids are being dropped off at orphanages as we speak because of this. And another thing, just because you hate something don't mean it's against the Bible. Jonah really didn't want to even help the people of Nineveh. He didn't even want to go talk to them. But guess what? The Most High wanted them to have a chance. See, the Most High gets the final say. So if you see a brother who's walking around with, some pale Japhet woman and, she got her Passover bread in her hand, and is praying to the Most High Yah, watch out. That's what struck Miriam down. No one talks about that. When you say that it's a sin, why would the Most High Yah intervene with Moses? So you're saying now that the Most High Yah is defending a sinner. And then you called Abraham a man after his own heart. So you're saying that he's friends with a sinner because he literally had intercourse with Hagar, the Hamite. So I hope this video helped. Take care, everybody.